Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Dell Disability Lawyers, here with attorney Cesar Gavidia, and we're going to talk about one of Cesar's success stories against Lincoln Financial. And Cesar, in this case, I know you handled an appeal on behalf of our client.
Yep.
And what we like to talk about is the background of the case, how you were able to be successful in getting this denial reversed, and then hopefully some tips for people that they can take that will either help them if they choose to do their own appeal or to help them prevent a denial moving forward. So let's first hear about the background of this case.
So Greg, our client was a building engineer, actually worked and was employed with another, what used to be a common name in the insurance industry, John Hancock Financial Services. But he worked primarily in their internal administrative engineering maintenance department at their offices. And actually, at a pretty young age, he was in his 40s, and he started developing lumbar back issues and ulnar nerve entrapments in his arms, which really, being a physical job in terms of his occupational duties, always moving around, always being on his feet, carrying equipment, using different tools and things in his occupation. Which really made it difficult to continue. He submitted a disability claim with Lincoln, who was John Hancock's disability insurer. Actually, it was Liberty Assurance Company of Boston at the time, but now they're Lincoln Financial. So a lot of people that at one time may have said, "Oh, Liberty Mutual was my insurance company." Now it's this Lincoln Financial, who's also been around a long time. They approved him. They actually approved his claim. Without really too much, giving them too much of a problem or delay, and paid them for approximately 2 years, which is something else that we usually see. They'll pay you for what's called the own occupation disability period, and then when, as many of these policies do, they transition out of own occupation to any gainful occupation. They conduct another review. Usually have internal doctors, medical reviewers, or sometimes they go outside of the company and hire physician consultants who do what they call independent reviews of the medical records and produce a report basically saying that the medical records don't support any limitations that would prevent them from performing a gainful occupation.
So what did Lincoln Financial do in this particular case to deny the claim?
So in this case, they brought in a board-certified physical medicine doctor. So basically a physician who is familiar with physical therapies and physical medicine specifically. And they did a review of the medical records. They found he had limitations, but not any limitations with regards to sitting and being able to perform a sedentary job. They then also conducted a vocational assessment where they basically had a vocational consultant who they have in-house do a survey of occupations that they would be qualified to perform based on their education, training, experience, and in this case also be able to produce a wage within 60% of his prior earnings, which their vocational consultant says they conducted thoroughly and fairly, and they came up with 3-4 occupations that he could perform, none of which really he had any prior training, education, or experience for, and even arguably didn't have any transferable skills for. And on the basis of that information that they got from probably more from the physical medicine doctor, who basically had released him to go to sedentary work, or argued that he could perform a sedentary occupation, they cut his benefits off from that.
And what were the requirements of his job prior? Was that considered a medium to heavy duty type job?
Well, yeah, of course, right? Working in this as a building engineer, which is really a maintenance job, and you're on call all the time, basically. Anytime something functionally goes wrong with any aspect of a building, I mean, it could be a door, it could be an air conditioning unit.
He was also like the handyman repairman.
Right.
Okay. Because some building engineers...
But he also ran the entire department.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they must have had quite a substantial building where he was working. And so now it moved into this type of job where basically Lincoln was saying, look, we think you could sit at a desk all day, even though he's never done a particular job like that, but they also thought he had the skill set to do that. So your job was to not only prove that he couldn't do a job that required him to sit for at least six hours a day, but also talk about vocationally that he may not have the skills to do a particular type job. So how did you go about doing those things?
So when we had our own vocational consultant do the review of vocationally what occupations he'd be capable of performing, not only did we eliminate those occupations because really realistically, based on the DOT standards that they were using at the time, they wouldn't earn him that 60% of his prior earnings. We also had a functional capacity exam done that showed, based on his specific problems and issues in his lumbar spine and the radiculopathy he was having, which included basically pain, numbness, tingling, severe, pretty significant neurological symptoms happening in his lower extremities, he wouldn't be capable of doing any sort of sedentary occupation. During this time, he was also awarded Social Security disability, and we thought it would be important to obtain the report from the Social Security Administration's medical review to include with the appeal, which we did. Now, insurance companies often say we don't have to give any weight, or we don't have to give any deference to the Social Security Administration's decision. They'll even say that just because you were awarded Social Security disability benefits doesn't mean you'll be awarded your long-term disability benefits through our insurance policy, even though the standard may seem much higher or more stringent under the Social Security standards. But we felt that this report really encapsulated the extent of his restrictions and limitations. So in submitting that with the FCE, with the vocational assessment, we were able to have success with this appeal.
Talk about that functional capacity exam, because that seems like a great tool that you just briefly glossed over. What is that, and what were the results of that? What kind of results did you get out of that helped to show his functional capabilities?
Well, it was important that in this particular case, Lincoln hadn't done any sort of assessment like that. They just had done a medical review, basically a paper review of the file, which is really inferior to doing a physical examination and putting someone through the physical requirements of doing a sit-down job 6 to 8 hours a day, or being able to tolerate certain lifting conditions or things like that. Especially, look, we're not looking at his occupation anymore. Now it's a question of whether he's disabled from any gainful occupation, which could encompass some sedentary type of jobs. But that is exactly what, in terms of this FCE and putting them through the various exercises and tasks that they have them do to be able to establish the extent of their limitations and functional capabilities with regards to sitting, standing, walking, and those kind of what seem and what we all kind of take for granted every day that we're able to do without perhaps any real serious issues. But in this case, it was really a key component of this whole appeal to be able to link that then to the vocational assessment, because one kind of will follow the other. Without a strong evidence of physical disability, really the vocational assessment is going to be useless, because they're going to line up the occupations based on the restrictions and limitations that person may have based on the medical evidence, or in this case, this report.
And how important was additional support from his treating doctors, and how did you go about getting that?
With this particular case, there obviously was the long history of records, but I don't think that with his particular doctors, they understood this nuance from working in his own occupation to working in any gainful occupation. So I don't think that there was as heavy a reliance as there was initially with the own occupation part of the claim, but on an ongoing basis, he has continued to receive benefits. I think that FCE really went a long way to be able to go back to his doctors, so now they felt far more confident and be able and understood more the extent of his physical limitations. Which honestly, when you go to your doctor, they may conduct a physical exam, but they really don't know what the extent of your limitations are. And whatever limitations you express you have to them, whatever symptoms you express you have to them, or how they impact you functionally on a day-to-day basis, they're going to consider completely subjective. So this FCE report is a key objective component to the whole thing.
Right. Because the FCE takes several hours to complete the exam, the doctors see you for 15 minutes. Even treating doctors, but what's even worse is then the disability insurance company doctors, who almost never look at the claimant, don't speak to the claimant, rarely speak to the claimant's treating doctors, they feel like they can make a determination just upon looking at the records.
Right.
So it's so ironic that without that physical interaction with the claimant, that basically these doctors, who we call hired guns or employees of Lincoln Financial, are making determinations on a person's functional ability 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, without even examining them. And it always disturbs me, that they're able to do that, because if the claimant had just called them on the phone and said, hey, I'm having this pain, I can't do my work or whatever, a doctor over there wouldn't say, send me your records and I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you. They would say, no, I'm sorry, you have to come in. I'm not going to write you a prescription for any meds or anything like that. I'm not going to prescribe therapy for you. I can't do it without seeing you. But yet the disability insurance companies make big determinations saying you can't work for 40 hours a week just upon looking at a simple record. So
Right.
it's a process that is inherently biased against claimants, and it takes the process of having more than just your medical records, meaning having a representative, an attorney who knows how to communicate back to them through the claimant statement, through additional statements in the attending physician statements, through modified physician statements that I know you prepare and work on with the doctors, to really clarify to the claim reps, here's what's going on in a total picture, such that the goal for us, to keep it simple, is give them so much evidence that they can't basically disagree with the findings of the treating doctors, and that's obviously what you were able to do in this particular case. So congratulations on a great outcome, and now moving forward, I know that you'll be involved in protecting the benefits and, again, doing all the claimant statements, doing the attending physician statements, doing the interviews
Right.
for the claimant.
And I think it's also important, the fact that, although he had been diagnosed with this condition and was considered disabled from an early age, I mean, in his late 40s is pretty early to basically have these arthritic conditions progress to a point where you can't function in an occupation, even Social Security disability to consider you totally disabled. This is a progressive condition, but I think there's this this misunderstanding that simply because the insurance company might find you disabled at this period of time, and it's a progressive condition, it's kind of widely known it's not going to get better, they still require this evidentiary threshold every month from your doctors, from the medical records that are being presented to them. And if they'll have a doctor, just this doctor who's got a stack of records in front of them for various claimants, grab yours off the stack, review them, and say there's nothing here to support the limitations that are being placed on them. And they will, it doesn't matter how long they've been paying you, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, if the medical records aren't currently supporting, if there's not current medical evidence in there, even from a serious progressive condition, they're going to terminate the claim.
Right, and I know you'll continue to guide the claimant to not only make sure that he's going to these appointments, but also in terms of what's being told to the doctor and what's being documented, and then subsequently reviewing the records on a periodic basis, just like we know MetLife is getting the records, because if they can find any reason to deny the claim, any type of weakness whatsoever, they'll jump through that hoop and deny the claim, and then we're going to have to do this process all over again. So obviously it's very disruptive to the claimant. You want to avoid that and be proactive and do whatever you can to keep the benefits from being denied. So if you're someone out there who has a Lincoln Financial long-term disability claim, no matter where you live in the country, feel free to reach out to Cesar, myself, any of our long-term disability lawyers. We always provide an initial free phone consultation, and we look forward to discussing your claim with you. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process, and when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now, at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search, plus we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now, we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.